In this video, I will briefly review and rank all the historical TV shows of 2024 that I have seen. It is now a tradition that I make these yearly ranking videos every January, and I always use these 5 tiers to rank the TV series of the previous year. I have seen 22 historical TV shows that originally aired in 2024, including very good ones and quite bad ones. There were some great surprises, but also a few disappointments last year. So many historical shows came out in 2024 that there are actually several series that have been on my watch list, but I haven't managed to watch yet because there just hasn't been enough time for so much new stuff coming out. Firstly, I managed to watch the final season of one of my favorite historical TV shows ever, Season 4 of the Russian TV series Ekaterina. Season 4, which got the title Favorites, is about the last years of Catherine the Great's life. It mainly evolves around her last favorites, the young Lanskoy and Zubov, and the succession crisis in Russia, as Catherine considers excluding her son Paul from the succession and pass the crown to her eldest grandson Alexander instead. I have loved the previous seasons of this series too, not all of them equally because there have been very good and a bit less great seasons as well, and I think this one is a strong season again. It was a great ending to a truly excellent historical TV show. So this first one already goes into the highest tier. Perfect start to 2024. Now let's see the next one, Masters of the Air, an American war drama miniseries. It follows a heavy bomber unit in the American Air Force in England during World War II. It is the third series in the World War II miniseries trilogy produced by Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks, the previous two being Band of Brothers and The Pacific. The series has a very strong cast with Austin Butler, Callum Turner, Anthony Boyle and Barry Keoghan, among others. I like this series, although I don't think it is as good as Band of Brothers. It had some exceptionally great episodes, but a few less good, quite boring ones as well. So for this reason, I can't put this into the highest category, only in the second one. I usually bring the docudrama series in these rankings as well, if I watch any. And last year I watched the 6-part Netflix docudrama Alexander, Making of a God. I must confess that I barely remember anything about this series now, which is very telling. I know that I found that for a docudrama it was not historically accurate enough, and I also thought it was quite boring because its 6 episodes were not even about Alexander the Great's whole reign. It was only about a very few years, his fights against Persia, and that was all, for 6 episodes. So I think I have to put this quite low into the could have been better category. Luckily, the next TV show I watched was much better. It was the K-drama The Goryeo-Khitan War. It is about the 11th century war between the Goryeo dynasty of Korea and the invading Khitan armies, and it also tells a kind of coming-of-age character development story of the young king of Goryeo at that time. I like historical K-dramas, and this series didn't disappoint either. Perhaps its second half was not as great as the first half, so that is why I think I will not put this in the highest tier, but just below that. And then we have another series about Asian history. It is the great success of last year, the Shōgun. I think everyone has heard of this series. It was a big hit. It swept all the TV awards. It is an American TV series set in feudal Japan. It is based on James Clever's novel, which was previously adapted into a 1980 miniseries, which was a great success back then. I saw that miniseries some years ago, and although I acknowledge that it is a great series, it didn't quite captivate me emotionally. But this new TV series, I absolutely loved it. I loved the characters, the story, the whole atmosphere, everything. I think it deserves every award it got. I hope season 2 will come soon. So, of course, it belongs to the highest category. After seeing the Shōgun, I wanted to watch more historical dramas about Japanese history, so I searched a bit. That is when I found Dear Radiance, a Japanese historical show that came out in 2024 too. It tells the story of Murasaki Shikibu, who is known as the author of The Tale of Genji, which is considered to be the world's very first novel. The show is about her remarkable life, as well as about the current political events and the life and intrigues in the imperial court. This was the very first Japanese TV series I saw. I have seen Japanese movies, but never a TV series, and I liked it very much. Maybe it is a bit too long for my taste, but I will still put this in the very good tier. The next series I watched was Mary and George, a British miniseries about George Villiers, the favorite of King James I of England and his mother Mary Villiers. Now, I have very mixed thoughts about this series. First of all, I have to admit that I watched it right after seeing The Idea of You, and I am probably not the best judge here because I just enjoyed every scene where Nicholas Galitzine appeared on screen. But at the same time, Mary's character annoyed me to hell. She made no sense to me. She was annoying as hell. Julianne Moore is a great actress, so it is probably not her fault, but the writers. The other characters, George, James, Prince Charles, were much more interesting. The story was okay, but nothing great. So I think this series will be now the first one in the decent tier. Then I watched another miniseries, We Were the Lucky Ones, which is an American series adapted from Georgia Hunter's book, inspired by the story of her own family's struggle to survive World War II and the Holocaust. It is set in Poland. It is about a Polish Jewish family consisting of 2 parents and their 5 adult children. Now, this series was a great surprise to me. I didn't expect it to be so good and engaging. And the cast, led by Joey King, also did an excellent job. So I am putting this into the very good tier. Right after this, I saw another World War II and Holocaust drama, The Tattooist of Auschwitz. It tells the story of Lali Sokolov, a Jewish prisoner in the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp, who is given the job of tattooing identification numbers on fellow prisoners' arms. The main role is played by Jonah Hauer-King, you know, the prince from the new controversial The Little Mermaid. I think this series received much praise and very high ratings, but I must say I just found this a correct, decent World War II and Holocaust series. There are so many movies and TV series made about this topic every single year that it is not easy to stand out from the crowd, I think. So, this will go into the middle category. Another historical series that aired last spring was Franklin, which depicts the years United States founding father Benjamin Franklin spent in France to convince King Louis to support the burgeoning United States in the American Revolutionary War. Franklin is portrayed by Michael Douglas, and I think he and his acting performance are the best part of the series, and there are also several great French actors in the series. I found this series okay, but nothing special. At the end it got a bit boring, and I was not sad it ended. Although I loved Lafayette's character in the series and I would love to see a spin-off with him. I think this should also go into the middle category. The next one is a very special TV series. It is a Dutch series, Máxima. This is the first Dutch series I have seen. It revolves around the early life of Queen Máxima of the Netherlands and the beginnings of her relationship with King Willem-Alexander. This series is a kind of Dutch The Crown, and Máxima, as the protagonist of the series, is a fascinating character with her very interesting Argentinian backstory. I loved this series very much. Perhaps not all episodes were equally interesting, but I very much look forward to season 2. So I think I should put this in the very good tier. The next one is Saladin, Conqueror of Jerusalem, a Turkish-Pakistani TV series about Sultan Saladin, who conquered Jerusalem back in 1187. Now, I was very hyped up about this series because I find Saladin a fascinating historical figure. I think he already had a very memorable portrayal in Kingdom of Heaven, which, in my opinion, redefined forever how enemies in historical dramas should be portrayed. So, I was very hyped up about Saladin getting his own series, but I got utterly disappointed. Absolutely, shockingly disappointed. This series is very boring and predictable. I could hardly get to the end. Very bad acting, bad writing, ridiculous characters, very repetitive storyline, very amateurish effects and stunts. Really, I can say nothing good about this. Instead of portraying Saladin as the remarkable special man he was, who respected his enemies and was respected by his enemies, Saladin is basically a copy-paste of those main heroes who appear in other Turkish historical series nowadays. He is arrogant and has no character development. And the series is miles away from history in every other aspect as well. Without major spoilers, let me just mention a few things. In the series, Saladin is the secret adopted son of Sultan Nur ad-Din, instead of just being a very talented commander of his, when such adoption was completely forbidden in their world. And then let's not even mention the enemies. King Baldwin, who looks twice the age he should be, is killed by his fictional sister Victoria, who looks like this, who then proclaims herself Queen of Jerusalem. And the biggest main enemy is not even the Crusaders and the Christians, but the Jewish. A great evil Jewish mastermind who plots to create the great Jewish kingdom of Jerusalem, which is, of course, a complete fiction and has zero to do with history. And the biggest problem is that at the beginning of each episode, instead of having a disclaimer that this contains historical inaccuracies for the sake of drama, there is a disclaimer that says that this story is based on history. Oh my god. Really, I don't recommend this to anyone. I have heard that season 2 is much better, but I sure as hell won't watch it. This was already too much of a waste of my time. But then I also watched 2 other Turkish historical dramas, which were much better. First, I watched the first season of Mehmed Fetihler Sultani, which is about Ottoman Sultan Mehmed the Conqueror. Since I wasn't the biggest fan of these new Turkish historical shows, I didn't want to start a new one, but then I heard very good things about this new Mehmed series. It is indeed a series with very high production values, and the storyline and the characters are also quite good. It has the same repetitiveness and one-sided approach as other Turkish shows, so I can't say it is very good, but it is decent. I also watched the 5th season of Kuruluş Osman, which is about Osman I, founder of the Ottoman Empire. Season 5 was a good surprise to me. I think it was much better than Season 4. It is really one of the best seasons of the show so far, although it was very long with 34 episodes, a bit too long in my opinion. Season 6 has already started airing, and I heard that would be the final season of the show. I am quite conflicted here. I would like to put this higher than decent, but if I look at the other shows in the very good tier, I don't think it belongs there. So I think it is decent, but very decent. In the summer, the third season of Vikings Valhalla came out, and it was the final season of the show. I have to confess that I barely remember anything of this season now. I remember so little that I actually thought I saw it like January last year, but no, it aired in the summer only a few months ago, and I had to check Wikipedia to refresh my mind what actually happened in this season. So yeah, for the final season it was very, very anticlimactic. This season, and basically this whole show, feels like only the prelude of something much bigger. Except that something bigger will never happen. So I put this into the could have been better tier. There was also one Ancient Rome set series I saw last year. It was Those About to Die. It explores the world of gladiators and chariot racing in ancient Rome during the reign of Emperor Vespasian, played by none other than Anthony Hopkins. His portrayal of the Emperor was the highlight of the series, and there were other strong cast members like Tom Hughes or Ivan Rion. But there were other characters like Domitian, one of the most important characters in the series, who I found utterly annoying. The plot was okay, with some good storylines and some less interesting ones, so this series should go into the decent tier. Then I watched the second season of The Serpent Queen, which is a Starz TV series about Catherine de' Medici, Queen of France. This season starts with her ruling France as regent for her son Charles, and it ends with the St. Bartholomew's Days massacre. I think that 2 years ago I ranked season 1 as decent, but I have to say this season 2 was less good to me. The characters, the writing, the supposed humor of the series, it was all quite off to me. While the historical inaccuracies of season 1 felt more justified to me, happening for the sake of drama, now in season 2 they just made no sense at all and they were a lot. So I have to rank this lower, maybe not the lowest tier, but just above that a bit. Later last year I watched another South Korean drama, Queen Woo, which is about a 2nd century queen of Goryeo who loses her husband, the king. The series basically deals with the events that unfold right after the king's death, how the queen handles that and how she manages to keep her power while the court wants to choose a new king. Now, I think this drama was quite controversial in South Korea because of the many nude and erotic scenes it had. Well, to me, it didn't seem so many or so wild. I mean, if you have seen Game of Thrones, the level of sexuality this series has is close to nothing. My problem was something else with this drama. I think it dragged on far too long, it didn't have enough story for its 8 episodes, and also I didn't like the ending at all. I think it didn't finish anything. So this will also go into the could have been better category. Now here comes a series that I can finally rank much higher. It is the 2nd season of the Italian series The Law According to Lidia Poët. It is about the adventures of 19th century Italian lawyer Lidia Poët, who was denied permission to practice law because of her sex. In 2023 I liked the first season of this show, and now I like season 2 even better. I think this season was even stronger. The cases she solved were much better written, and I also think the main storyline was more interesting than in season 1. So I will put this in the very good tier. The next one is also a 2nd season, but we had to wait not 1 but 9 years for it. It is season 2 of Wolf Hall, called The Mirror and the Light. This season starts off right after the end of season 1, on the day of Anne Boleyn's execution and King Henry's wedding to Jane Seymour, and it ends with the death of the protagonist, Thomas Cromwell. In this season we see him rise to the peak of his power and then fall from it. Now, I loved season 1. Back then, I put it on the list of my favorite historical miniseries ever. Is season 2 as good as that? No. In my opinion, it is only a shadow of that. But there are still very well written dialogues, very good acting performances, very historically accurate sets and costumes. I definitely can't rank it in the highest tier, and if it wasn't for the last episode, which had such a great writing, I would even consider to rank this in the middle. But with the last episode and in honor of the first season that I loved, I think I will be good enough to put this in the very good tier. The last 2 shows I watched in 2024 were both Sisi series. First, I watched the second season of The Empress. It continues the story of Elizabeth of Bavaria, Empress of Austria, as the wife of Emperor Franz Joseph. Now, season 1 ended with a cliffhanger, which season 2 did nothing with, because there is like a 2-year-long time jump between the two. It is very weird. And this goes for the whole season as well. If something interesting is started in one episode, and there is a cliffhanger at the end of it, there is a time jump at the beginning of the next episode and the interesting storyline is abandoned. So yeah, the writing is quite off sometimes. There are nonsense storylines, there are boring ones, but the series does have some saving grace and more interesting storylines as well. I am quite conflicted here. I don't know whether to put it in the middle tier or below that. Maybe middle? But just because it included Maximilian and his wife Charlotte. But I must say that I still cannot understand why many people love this show so much. Then I watched the other German Sisi series, titled Sisi. It was its 4th and final season that came out in December. Now, you may remember that I hated this series when it started. I roasted so many aspects of it when I made the comparison videos with the first season of this series and the first season of The Empress. Now, I must say that after watching all 4 seasons, the show has improved a lot. It is as if the creators had watched my videos and heard my complaints and suggestions, because the later seasons included so many things I recommended and it left out most things I didn't like about season 1. Season 4 is mostly set in Bavaria, in Sisi's childhood home. It includes some Wittelsbach family drama, the lives of Sisi's siblings, and therefore Franz Josef barely appears. I think that this series feels better the more time it spends away from Vienna and the more time Sisi spends away from Vienna, which is quite funny because the real Sisi also felt much better far away from Vienna. This season and the Bavarian storylines are quite fun. So I rank this the highest I have ranked any season of this show, in the decent tier. So this is the 2024 historical TV shows ranking. It is rather positive than negative, but there have been better years. Quantity was certainly not a problem in 2024. There were so many historical TV series. However, the quality could be better. What do you think of these? Do you agree with my rankings? What shows did you see in 2024?